Beautiful. Hey, how we doing, YouTube? Great to see you guys. Guys, in this video, we're going to get into how to listen effectively. Awesome. So there's 3 key principles that we need to learn to integrate into our life if we want to learn how to listen effectively. Listening effectively is such an it's such an underrated skill that we don't think about today because we live in a society that values consumption, that values speaking, that values giving. However, we need to learn how to receive. And when it comes to listening, listening is one of the most important life skills that you can master if you want to increase any type of relationships, longevity, or sustainability. What do I mean by that? Basically, I'm saying is learn to listen to people, learn to be quiet, learn to be still, learn to still the mind and just be with a person and really listen to them and watch all of your relationships increase incrementally in terms of how close you feel to another individual, in terms of the support you receive for them. Relationships are really key in life because when it comes to business or when it comes to romance or friendships, if you notice that everything is surrounded by relationships. So everything is relationship. And so that's why I always stress this in my own work. So if you want to learn how to have good relationships in business or in romance or in friendship, then you need to learn how to listen effectively. And this is a skill that we are lacking entirely within our culture today. So in this video, we're going to get into it. I'm going to go over 3 key principles on how to listen effectively. This is something that I apply to my everyday life as a coach and some of the therapy work that I do. Listening effectively is such a key skill if you want to be successful in any line of work. Without being able to listen what another person's needs are or what they're really saying, that relationship will naturally disintegrate because they won't feel heard, they won't feel listened to, and then that'll create pain within them, and that will not benefit you, whatever it is that you're trying to do. So let's get into it, guys. Awesome. Number one, when it comes to how to listen effectively it's pretty simple, but this is huge. We don't do this. Put aside preconceptions. Put aside preconceptions. Now, we all have what are called schemas, right? Have you ever heard of the word schema before? It's a psychological term, schema. And what a schema is, it's like a mental framework or a map. It's basically a conception of how we understand the world. So a good example of a schema is like a religion, Christianity, right? So let's say that you believe in Christianity and that's how you see the world. That's your mental schema for how you view the world. You believe that there's a God, you believe that there's good and evil, and you have certain beliefs around following things and making things happen in terms of morality. So that your mental schema is really the preconceptions that you bring to life. And a lot of times what happens is when we're in relationship with a person, so let's say we're speaking with an individual, right? So we're over here and we're talking, and there's someone over here on the right side listening. There's a process. There's a process that happens, and I see this happen in romantic relationships all the time. When we're speaking, there's a gap, okay? And this gap determines the quality of the relationship or the interaction that we're in. And so within this gap, we have our schemas, so how we see the world, what we're thinking, or our interpretation. That's better. I'll just put interpretation. So interpretation of what the other person's saying. And then our communication to them. So what we're saying. And this other person has all these 3 things as well. So they have their mental schemas. They have their interpretation of what you're saying, and then they have what they're communicating to you back. So communication is really, really confusing at times But the key word here that we really want to pay attention to is schemas, okay? Schemas are those mental concepts that we have of the world. So everyone has a mental schema for how they think relationships should be conducted. Everyone has a mental schema for how they think relationships or friendships should occur or should go. We all have these mental schemas, and a lot of disconnection and pain is created when one person does not follow the schema that we have, that we think of. So for instance, let's say a person has a mental schema of Christianity. That's how they see the world. And then they get into relationship with another person, they get married, and then all of a sudden they realize that, oh my gosh, the person that I married, they don't actually see the world how I do. And this is this is actually creating friction within our relationship. And so when we listen, what happens is we're listening from our schemas a lot of times, from that mental framework, right? So I'm going to put that in purple letters here. The mental framework. Mental framework. So if we're listening from this mental framework of our own schema, we're not actually going to be able to hear that other person. So when it comes to listening effectively, guys, the number one key thing here is put aside preconceptions. And all those preconceptions are those mental schemas, that mental framework that you have. So let's say someone comes home and they want to share with you how their day went and something went wrong at work. And you say that, so I'll give you an example of this. I had my last girlfriend, she would come home from work and she just want to share with what's going on with her patients and just share about her day. And I didn't know how to listen effectively. I was always thinking, oh, well, how can I make her day be better? And how can I offer her solutions? Because my mental schema for how to have a good relationship was you give people solutions. But her mental schema for how to have a good relationship was just listen to the other person and don't offer solutions, just shut up. So, for instance, my mental framework was getting in the way of us building a deep, communicative, long-lasting, longevitous relationship. They were different. So it's really important to understand what mental schemas do you have in your mind? How are they operating within your life? How are they determining the way that you function in the world? And how are they affecting your relationships? This gap that we're talking about right here, that gap, in order to have effective communication, in order for you to really listen to what another person's saying, you have to be aware of that schema. What is their schema? And put aside your own schema. So put aside your preconceptions. Everyone has preconceptions of how life should work in regards to a certain issue. We have preconceptions on, voting, on government, we have all these. Whenever you really want to listen to a person, it's not about what you have to say, okay? It's about what they're sharing with you. And then you can share what you want. So put aside preconceptions. All right, what's number 2 here? Being present. Being present. This is key. Now, how do you be present? Well, one of the keys to being present is slowing down everything in your life. A lot of us, even in business, I see this all the time. People give out like 1 million cards. They get business cards. Then. They just give it out to everywhere. And then they call up 1 million people, but they're not actually doing anything. They're just staying busy and feeling like they're doing what they should be doing. They're not actually building relationships. They're not actually listening effectively to people or getting involved with people. Being present is key when we want to learn how to listen to others. If you're not being present with another individual, they're going to feel it. They're going to feel like you're somewhere off. When you're really present with an individual, a transaction actually occurs. And when that transaction actually occurs, that creates momentum. A momentum is built, a relationship is being built. So become present. Learn to be really present. How do you stay present with people? Well, the number one key thing here is slow down. Slow down everything. Look, in a world where everything happens real quickly up here, the people who are slowing down are the ones who are actually doing things. They're slowing down. They're asking themselves, how can I make this? What do I need to do? How can I master this process? How can I make things easier for myself? They start asking questions that make their life easier. And so when you want to listen effectively with another person, make sure you're present with them and just slow everything down. Slow down the conversation. Maybe they're talking really, really fast. When a person's talking to you really, really fast, they're communicating to you in a certain way. They're not just communicating to you with words, they're also communicating to you that they feel rushed and that they feel anxious. And so that's the number 2 thing here. Be present. Be present, slow things down with the person, see what they're actually trying to say, not just in their words, but also in their body language. And that's number 3 here. That's really, really key. Body language. Body language. What else are they communicating? All communication, this is a crazy statistic, all communication, I'm going to put this a star next to this, all communication is 35% verbal and 55% nonverbal. Okay? 35% verbal, 55% nonverbal. What does that mean? That means that when people are communicating to you, they're not just communicating random stuff through their words. Have you ever seen those people that just blab on and on and on, but they're not actually communicating anything? They're not actually in a relationship? Well, that's because they're not actually communicating anything verbally. They might be communicating something more non-verbally. So for instance, when I have clients who come to me and they're worried or they're anxious, I sit down with them and they're talking, and I'll ask them to stop. I say, stop, look, you're not communicating anything to me. What you're communicating to me is that you're anxious and that you're worried. Are you feeling anxious and worried? And then they're like, oh, yeah, actually I am. I didn't even know I was feeling anxious and worried and stressed out and crazy. And so slow things down, be present, but then look at the other forms of communication. Look at their body language. How are they talking? What's the inflections within their voice? And then address those and communicate back to those things. If a person says they're talking fast, or, I remember in my last relationship, whenever my girlfriend was anxious, she would start cleaning up everything. And it was just like, it was random. Like she would just like start putting stuff away, grab one thing, grab another, clean this, clean that. And I would talk to her and I say, hey, what's the matter? Like, are you feeling anxious because you're just cleaning up random stuff and you're not actually doing anything? You're just moving things around. Like, are you okay? Like, you feel like do you feel stressed out and worried and anxious? And she goes, yeah, I didn't really know that. And so we communicate ways non-verbally all the time, but we don't take the time to notice that. We don't take the time to look at the other person and see what is their body saying. Not just what is their voice saying, what is their actual body saying? We communicate with our bodies all the time. Like, what if I reach my hands out like this, what am I communicating? I'm communicating openness. I'm communicating strength, confidence. I'm excited. Maybe I just finished a race and I'm like, yes, and I feel good. So what is your body communicating? What if I'm communicating, what am I doing this? I'm communicating, I'm being closed off. I don't want to talk to anybody. So look for those verbal and nonverbal cues as well. Don't just pay attention to words. Pay attention to people's body language, their inflection, how they show up, their eyes, what they're doing. And and then point that out. Say, hey, I just saw your face get really sad when I said that. Do you feel sad about that? How do you feel? And when you start to really pay attention with people, and then you communicate and you communicate to their nonverbal cues. That's a key thing here, nonverbal, right? 50%, 55% of communication is nonverbal. You communicate to those nonverbal cues, then people will respond more, and you'll get so much more out of that transaction. And people will say, wow, that guy's really tapped in. He's really listening to me. And it's not just listening verbal, it's you're actually interacting with them non-verbally. So listening is more than just using your ear, guys. It's actually communicating to people non-verbally, and it's addressing and seeing those signs. Okay, this person is closed off, or okay, this person is not facing me. They're like this. So look at that and address that, and then just talk it and express it. And then that person will be shocked. They'll be like, yeah, actually, I am feeling a little closed off. I didn't really realize that. I'm sorry. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. You know? Awesome, guys. So that's the three key principles right here. How to listen. Put aside preconceptions. What are the schemas that you have in your life that are putting a gap between you effectively communicating with your partner, or your romantic relationship, or your friendship, or your business partner? What are those things, those mental schemas that we don't have in place that are affecting the way we listen to others, right? And that mental schema is just that mental framework that you have. And so let's just say you're talking about a romantic relationship and you're with your romantic partner, and your romantic partner says, well, I think relationships should be this way. But you're just waiting for the next thing to say. You're just like, oh, I just want to put them down. I just want to say how they're wrong. You're not actually listening to them. If you're just looking for a spot where you can interject yourself, you're not listening to them. Put aside your preconceptions. Really be with them. Really hear them out and say, okay, I'm hearing what you're saying. And then repeat back to them. Say, is this what you're saying? Do you mean that you feel like I don't listen to you enough, or that I don't express my love to you enough? Is that what you're communicating to me? And ask them that, and then they'll be like, yeah, that's how I'm feeling. And then you can put in how you see the world, or how you see relationships operating. That's a really good one. Repeat back to people what they've told you when it comes to listening. It sounds like it's redundant. I mean, and even in my own videos, you guys can see that I probably repeat myself a majority of times. Guys, the human brain needs to hear something at least 20 times before it starts applying it, okay? So if you're just reading a book once, that's not it. You should read a book at least 10 or 15 times. When I read a book, I read it at least 10 times. I listen to it, I read it. Like, I'm reading one book this year, and that's it. It's just one book, and I'm making that, and I'm embodying that and making that a part of my life. So repeat yourself. When a person communicates something back to you, repeat back to them what they said, and ask them if that was right. And that makes that effective more. That makes that communication way more effective. And then that person will feel really listened to. Wow, that person's really listening to me. They're repeating back to me what I'm saying. Don't be worried about getting ridiculous with it. I get really ridiculous with it. Cool. Mental framework. What's number 2? Being present. Be really present with people. Be incredibly present with them. Just be with them in the moment. You know, what is it that you can provide for them in that moment, in terms of just being with them? Like, when you're with a person, you're just fully with them, and slowing things down, they're going to feel that. They're going to feel listened to. They're going to be like, wow, this person's incredibly present with me. I want to share more, and I want to share more. And then you apply those other techniques where you repeat back to that other person and you're present with them. Then they feel really listened to. Number 3, body language. Remember, guys, we don't just communicate verbally. You know, we communicate non-verbally as well. You know, so like, if I have my shoulders drooped like this and my eyes look tired, and I walk in and I walk into work like this, I'm communicating to people that I'm not fully here, and that I'm really exhausted, and that I'm tired, and I'd rather be back in my bed, right? And so if someone comes in to work, or they come in to a conversation with you, and you're like this, and you're just, you're looking off to the right, to the left, and you're not focused and fully with them, they're going to feel that, and they're going to say, wow, this person's not actually listening to me. Guys, the purpose of listening to people is to create relationship, and the purpose of creating relationship is to create life the way that you want it, whether it's in romance or business or whatever. Relationship is so incredibly important. Listening, how to listen, is such an important skill that we need to learn if we want to create life the way that we want it. If you do not know how to listen, if you are not applying these things in your life, start applying them right now. Really listen and be with people. Put aside all your preconceptions when you talk with another individual. Be aware of the mental frameworks and the schemas within yourself that are keeping you from really authentically connecting with another individual. Be present, slow things down. I know we feel like we have a million things to do in one day and we don't have enough time. Guys, the whole world feels like that, and that's why the world's existing up here and everyone's running around like chickens with their heads cut off. I guarantee you, if you slow things down, you get present, your relationships are going to become so much more valuable to you, because it's always about quality. It's not about quantity, right? It's never about quantity. It's always about quality. Then body language. How are you communicating to other individuals? What's your body language? Is it 35% verbal? It's 55% nonverbal. Those are the statistics. So be aware of how are you using your body. I'm always very aware of how I use my body. When I want to connect with the person, I'll touch them on the shoulder real gently, real quickly. If that feels too threatening, I'll touch them on the shoulder, but I'll touch them with my backhand palm. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. and I communicate that gentleness. That's a way to that's a way for me to physically communicate to them, but also a way that I show endearment and that I show care and that I really care what they have to say. And then they're going to feel like they can share more around me. So be very conscious about the way you communicate and about the way you listen. Apply these principles. Put aside preconceptions, be present, slow things down, and then be aware of body language, how we communicate verbally and non-verbally as well. Awesome, guys. That's all I got for this time. If you guys have any questions, please throw them up there. Guys, I'm going to start doing a live show where I have people call in because I feel like that would be much more enjoyable. So if you guys have questions, please feel free to send them to me. I also do these live streams every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Mountain time. Some weeks I do cancel them, but a majority of the time I'm here. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining me. I look forward to speaking with you more. If you got any questions, once again, just send them to me and we'll take it from there. All right, guys, thanks a lot. I hope you have an enjoyable weekend. Bye now. I'll see you at Facebook. Thanks for joining me, guys.